Okay, let's pick up from where we left off. Just in our last tutorial, we generated our curves using both the contour and the section tool. And now we're going to move on to the next step. Now we're going to get into the heart of the tutorial. In this step, we're going to cut our ribs. Okay, and to do that, we're going to have to set up a directory on our machine where we have the rib files available so that we can drag them easily into Rhino, so that we can move them into Rhino very easily. I have two monitors, so I can have this on one monitor and my Rhino work on the other. You might have to minimize your screen and make your Rhino screen a little smaller so that you have access. And here I have my cut my rib script and my massive unroll, and the way that you invoke them is by dragging them into your Rhino environment. I'm going to move this off to the side. Okay, now I'm going to come down to my curves wide layer. I'm going to turn off my object, and I'm going to change my view to the front by hitting Control and F2 and change my view to the front. And I'm going to make the curves Y layer active. And you know what? I'm going to change this name to surfaces Y, and you'll see why in a second. And we may as well do this one also. We're going to change this one to surfaces X. Okay, so let's go here to surfaces Y. I'm going to make that the current layer, and I'm going to what I need to do, I need to convert my, and let me minimize this so we can see it in all of our windows. I need to convert my curves into planar surfaces because the cut my rib script needs a planar surface to work. It will not work on curves. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to come here through the middle where I can select all of my vertical curves here, and I'm going to make this surfaces, and I'm going to come over here to planar curves, and you'll note that it transforms all of those to planar curves on the surfaces Y directory. Note that my curves are still selected. I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to call this curves Y. And I'm going to click down here. I'm going to change the object layer, put my curves on that layer, come back to my surfaces and turn those off. And now I have my surfaces in Y. Okay. I'm going to make my surfaces X directory layer active. Let me lock my surfaces Y layer, and I'm going to come through here from left to right, select all of those surfaces, and then I'm going to go up to surfaces, planar curves, and I'll generate my planar curves on that layer. Okay, and let me create a new layer, and I'll call this curves underscore X, and let's move that down a couple layers, make that the active layer, and I'll change my object layer, go back up to this one, and we'll turn that off. And as you can see now, I have two sets of planar curves. Let's maximize that, and that is the basic structure of my waffle sculpture. Okay, my serial planes moving in X and moving in Y. Okay, now let's get ready to cut some ribs. Now that we have our sections produced and transformed into planar surfaces. So I'm going to start off by going into my front window, and now I want to drag my cut my ribs script. I have a command running, you got to make sure that you drag my cut my ribs file there. Select X direction ribs, which are these, and I'll just left right select to select all of those. Press enter. Select Y direction ribs, left right, select all my ribs in Y. Press enter. The thickness will be 0.19, and I'll keep it the same in Y. And invert selection, no, we'll just leave these going, and there the script goes. It's working. Okay, and now let's hit Control and F4. Brings up our perspective window, and there you can see that our half lap joints have been produced. Now let's do this. Let's turn off our ribs in Y, and you'll notice that all our laps, half laps, okay, are moving in the same direction, which is what we want. Okay, and now let's turn off these. Come down here, and we'll look at these, and all of those were produced in the same direction. So we're good. We got our half lap joints produced, and we have our ribs cut. Now, the next step from here will be to unroll our ribs, okay? And this is why we have these set up on different layers. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn off the Y direction ones. We're going to do these one at a time. Okay? We're going to do these one at a time. We'll get our massive unroll script. And for this, let's move back here. I need to have all my windows open because I like to do this in the top window so that my text comes out all right. So we're going to grab our massive unroll script and select objects to unroll. This is important because the order in which you select them is the order in which they will be named. So we're going to do these first. Okay, press enter. The group ID, select group ID must be unique. We're just going to call this X, and that'll be the name that goes along with our ribs. We'll hit enter. And you'll notice that when it produces the ribs, it starts at 0, and it produces a rib and also a hatched label. Okay? These are our X ribs. Our X ribs, like so. Let's go back and let's make Y active. We're going to turn off X, and now we'll take our massive unroll script, drag that in, select objects to unroll. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, like so. Let's go into our top window. To make that active, you always want to make your top window active so that your text is laid out properly. and we're going to call this Y, this layer, and there we go. And there goes our Y ribs. Okay, and those are laid out like so. Okay, and there goes our ribs unrolled. Okay, so there are our ribs cut. And also our ribs unrolled. Okay, and in our next tutorial I'm going to show you how you process your cross sections, because there's a little work that we need to do in order to clean these up and to get these laid out and ready for processing on the laser cutter, and we'll deal with that in our next tutorial. But that goes over how we cut our ribs, then massively unroll them.